Hello and welcome. This was meant to be Wednesday's video, but today we are looking at notable names in Jewish American history. Today we are looking at Irving Berlin. Yeah, a notable composer and songwriter. Probably the best known song he ever wrote was God Bless America. Yeah. But as you can see, he also wrote White Christmas. So, anyway, um, let's look at him here. He was born in Russia in 1888 and immigrated to New York as a child and would be one of the most popular songwriters in the U.S. with hits like Alexander's Ragtime Band, What'll I Do, and White Christmas. And his film and Broadway musical work included Puttin' on the Ritz, Easter Parade, and Annie Get Your Gun. He was born Israel Berlin on May the 11th, 1888, in the village of Tyumen, Russia. His family fled to escape the region's persecution of the Jewish community and settled in New York City in the mid-1890s. As a teen, he worked as a street singer, and by 1906, he had become a singing waiter in Chinatown. His first published tune was 1907's Marie from Sunny Italy with Nick Nicholson writing the actual music. As the lyricist, Berlin's name was spelled I Berlin on the sheet music. He decided to keep the name, becoming Irving Berlin. So yeah. See, it was supposed to be Israel Berlin, but it was often spelled I Berlin, and so he said, fine, I'm Irving Berlin. Few years later, he would become a lyricist for the music publishing company Waterson and Snyder and released a major hit in 1911, Alexander's Ragtime Band, earning the nickname of King of Tin Pan Alley. He was diligent in his writing efforts and self-taught as a pianist, never learning how to read music and playing in the key of F sharp, working with a special transcribing keyboard and assistance to explore other keys. Nonetheless, by the second decade of the 20th century, he had dozens upon dozens of songs under his belt and started writing musicals by this time as well, having his Broadway debut with Watch Your Step in 1914. He became a U.S. citizen in 1916, and upon serving in World War I, wrote the musical Yip Yip Ya Fank as an army fundraiser. He wed Dorothy Getz in 1912, but she died months after their honeymoon after contracting typhoid fever. His sorrow was heard in the popular ballad When I Lost You. In 1925, he fell in love with heiress Ellen McKay, and her father was against the courtship and sent McKay away to Europe, during which time Berlin wrote beautiful tunes of yearning that included What'll I Do and Always. Upon her return to the States, they eloped and would have 4 children and be married for decades until McKay's death in 1988. So yeah, Mary Getz, they were together only months though, in 1912. But in 1925, he started getting together with Ellen McKay. So anyway, with Victor Herbert, Berlin became a charter member of the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers in 1914, and in 1919 founded the Irving Berlin Music Corporation, which gave the musician full control of his copyrights. Absolutely something that should be, instead of all these corporations owning copyrights, they should be the ownership of the creators. And especially in that time, that was a rarity. He would compose more than 1,500 songs and score dozens of musicals and films. Among those best known big screen works were Puttin' on the Ritz, 1929, Alexander's Ragtime Band, 1938, Easter Parade, 1948, and 3 Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers films, including Top Hat, 1935, which featured the song Cheek to Cheek, and Follow the Fleet from 1936, which featured the song Let's Face the Music and Dance. 1942's Holiday Inn showcased Bing Crosby singing White Christmas, which would become the highest selling tune in history. I'm sure a lot of you heard it. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. He shaped patriotic fervor as well with his composition of God Bless America, sung by Kate Smith in 1938, which became an unofficial national anthem to the U.S. After the war, he struck Broadway gold again in 1946, Annie Get Your Gun, inspired by the life of Annie Oakley. The musical starred Ethel Merman and featured a slew of popular songs like Anything You Can Do, I Can Do Better, I Got the Sun in the Morning, and There's No Business Like Show Business. Ethel Merman, I think it was The Honeymooners is what she starred on as one of the wives. The neighbor's wife, I think that's who she played. That's probably her most famous role, but yeah. Berlin had another hit with Merman in the 1950 musical Call Me Madam, which was also turned into a 1953 film. He would ultimately be nominated for 9 Academy Awards with 7 nods in the song category, winning in 1943 for White Christmas. Many of Berlin's songs became popular hits and are considered part of the standards canon, having been discovered by a multitude of artists, including Shirley Bassey, Nat King Cole, Diana Krall, Willie Nelson, Linda Ronstadt, Frank Sinatra, and Nancy Wilson. After the 1962 musical Mr. President, Berlin would retire, spending his extra time in the Catskill Mountains home and eventually withdrawing from public appearances. Nonetheless, he continued to receive accolades and an outpouring of praise for his magnificent contributions to the musical landscape. He would die in New York City on September the 22nd, 1989, at the age of 101. So, yeah. 1888 to 1989. Lived a long, long life. Mainly worked in music, theater, film, but he did some work with politics, in government, writing songs, especially during World War II, to write songs to try to keep up the spirits and stuff. He would serve in World War I. So, yeah. But that's what biography has to say. Let's look at National Archives. This, it looks like, was from a Prologue magazine. Irving Berlin, This is the Army. For today's standards, some of the story will sound old-fashioned, if not racist, or at least archaic. But keep in mind that took place in a much different era. Well, there's a lot of racism still around. It's not as different as it seems, but many of the themes stay the same. And in the future, what is new now will look at as being archaic. In a much different era, and belongs to its time and place. Yeah. Did stuff that starred young Ronald Reagan. Because remember, Reagan was an actor before he was in politics. For a long time. So, yeah. I won't really read this actual article. It's dealing more with his time in the dealing with the U.S. government, in the Army, and all the different things he's done. But yeah, let's look at the Britannica entry here. He was born May the 11th, 1888, Tyumen, Siberia, Russia. Died September 22nd, 1989, in New York City, New York. An American composer and songwriter who played the leading role in the evolution of the popular song from the early ragtime and jazz eras through the golden age of musicals. His easy mastery of a wide range of song styles for both stage and motion pictures made him one of the greatest and most enduring of American songwriters. He was born Irving Berlin, most likely in Tyumen, a city in Siberia, Russia. In a memoir, his daughter explains that Mogilev, which is today in Belarus, appears as Berlin's birthplace on several government documents, though later in life he learned he was from Siberia. His family immigrated to New York City in 1893, and his father, a Jewish cantor, died when he was 8. He obtained only 2 years of formal education and worked as a street singer and singing waiter in New York's Lower East Side. He began writing song lyrics, and his first published song was Marie from Sunny Italy. A printer's error on the song named him Irving Berlin, a surname that he subsequently kept and continued writing, and within a few years was a successful song plugger demonstrating new tunes. He was unable to read or write musically, but learned music by ear instead. He began writing his own music as well as lyrics in 1911 and wrote what quickly became the preeminent hit of Tin Pan Alley's ragtime vogue, Alexander's Ragtime Band. His first ballad, When I Lost You, was written in 1912, and he began contributing on numerous Broadway revues and musical entertainments, including Ferenc Ziegfeld's Follies. 1919, he founded the Irving Berlin Music Corporation to publish his own music. Through the following decades, he wrote scores for several musicals. One of the most popular, Annie, Get Your Gun, and it would become a film directed by George Sidney in 1950. Wrote more than 800 songs, which became standards in the Great American Songbook, including Oh, How I Hate to Get Up in the Morning, A Pretty Girl is Like a Melody, Always, and Remember, Cheek to Cheek, How Deep is the Ocean, Blue Skies, Putting on the Ritz, God Bless America, Heat Wave, No Business Like Show Business. In the era of big motion picture musicals, he was able to transfer his stage success to the screen, writing scores for several films, including Top Hat, Follow the Fleet, Easter Parade, Call Me Madam, and White Christmas, which was introduced by the movie Holiday Inn, which became one of the most popular songs ever recorded. I'm dreaming. Yeah. Altogether, Berlin wrote the scores for 19 Broadway shows and 18 motion pictures. Okay, let's look at Wikipedia. Full name, Israel Isidore Berlin. I'm probably butchering that, but it's okay. Born in Tyumen, Siberia, Russia, what was then the Russian Empire, and would die at the age of 101, New York City. Married Dorothy Getz, unfortunately only married a few months before she passed away of typhoid fever, but then would marry Ellen McKay over a decade later. And they would have 4 children. Would serve in the U.S. Army at the end of World War I, 1918-1919, would reach the rank of sergeant. Was in the 152nd Depot Brigade. Received numerous honors such as Academy Award, Grammy, and a Tony. Received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Ford in 1977. Walter Cronkite said he helped write the story of this country, capturing the best of who we are and the dreams that shape our lives. Known for writing music and lyrics in the American vernacular, uncomplicated, simple, and direct, and with a stated aim to reach the heart of the average American, who he saw as the real soul of the country. His Broadway musical, This Is the Army, was adapted into the 1943 film of the same name. His songs have reached the U.S. charts 25 the top of the charts 25 times and have been extensively re-recorded by numerous singers. Douglas Moore set Berlin apart from all other contemporary songwriters and includes him instead with Stephen Foster, Walt Whitman, and Carl Sandburg as great American minstrels, someone who has caught and immortalized in his songs what we say, what we think about, and what we believe. Because, yeah, Whitman is a writer. Foster was a musician. Sandberg, a writer. So yeah, it's someone instead who captures. He lists them as people who set the idea of what America is in their work. So yeah. George Gershwin said he was the greatest songwriter that has ever lived. And Jerome Kern said Irving Berlin has no place in American music. He is American music. But yeah, just kind of how he's seen here. Although his family came from Shtetl of Tolokin, Berlin later learned that he was probably born in Tyumen, Siberia. So yeah, like we said, there was some confusion in documents, but this is apparently where they left from when they went to America. But apparently he was born in Tyumen, Siberia, Russia. And he was born as one of 8 children to Moses and Lena Lipkin Berlin. Let's see. From Tolokin, they went to Antwerp and aboard the SS Rhineland, went to the U.S. After the family's naturalization, the name Berlin was Berlin. Changed the spelling a bit, so. Apparently, Berlin had no memory of his first 5 years in Russia except for one. He was lying on a blanket by the side of the road watching his house burn to the ground. By daylight, the house was an ashes. As an adult, he said he was unaware of being raised in abject poverty since he had known no other life. Um, One of hundreds of thousands of Jewish families who immigrated to the U.S. in the late 1800s, early 1900s, late 19th and early 20th century. Escaping discrimination, poverty, and brutal pogroms. Other such families included those of George and Ira Gershwin, Al Jolson, Sophie Tucker, L. Wolfe Gilbert, Jack Yellen, Louis B. Mayer of MGM, and the Warner Brothers. So yeah, a lot of talent in music and movies came in during that time. MGM, of course, movie studio, Louis B. Mayer, Warner Brothers, big movie studio, and they've expanded to a lot. Jolson was a actor, performer, because I know one of the big things is when he was in blackface in the movie The Jazz Singer. That's where a lot of it's like, ooh, but yeah, that's one of the big moments. George Gershwin was a composer like Berlin, so. But yeah. Briefly was in a basement flat on Monroe Street, then moved to a 3-room tenement at 330 Cherry Street. His father was unable to find comparable work as a cantor in New York, so took a job at a kosher meat market and gave Hebrew lessons on the side to support his family. He would die within a few years when Irving Berlin was only 13 years of age. But at 8, Berlin only had a few years of schooling and began helping to support his family. Became a newspaper boy, hawking the Evening Journal. Remember, at that point in history, usually it was boys like Berlin, among others. Paper, get your paper. Thanks, mister. Da 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 da. Yeah. One day, while delivering papers, he stopped to look at a ship departing for China and became so entranced that he did not see a swinging crane which knocked him into the river. He was fished out after going down for a 3rd time. He was still holding in his clenched fist the 5 pennies he had earned that day. Which, back then, remember, pennies were worth a lot. Wow. Nowadays, pennies have near zero value. They just count out the extra parts of change we have. But back then, the 19 teens, 1920s, you could get a lot for 5 pennies. His mother took a job as a midwife, and 3 of his sisters worked wrapping cigars, which was common with immigrant girls. His older brother worked in a sweatshop assembling shirts. And every evening they would come home from their day's work and would deposit the coins they had earned that day into Lena's outspread apron. Yeah, and it was coins, because even though working in a sweatshop or wrapping cigars, your minimum wage likely was going to be under $1. Well under $1. I don't even think there was an actual minimum wage at that point in U.S. history. But, yeah, anyway. Philip Furia wrote that when Irving Berlin, Israel Bailing, began to sell newspapers in the Bowery, he was exposed to the music and sounds coming from saloons and restaurants that lined the crowded streets, and sang some of the songs he heard while selling papers, and people would toss him some coins. He confessed it to his mom one evening, and his newest ambition in life was that he become a singing waiter in a saloon. So he would become a song plugger and singing waiter in cafes and restaurants in downtown areas of New York City. His first lyric, written with a cafe pianist, earned him a royalty of 37 cents. Before Berlin was 14, his meager income was still adding less than his sister's to the family budget, which made him feel worthless. Remember, they were only wrapping cigars. He was still making less than them. He left home and joined the city's ragged army of other young immigrants, and lived in the Bowery, taking up residence in one of the lodging houses that sheltered the thousands of other homeless boys in the Lower East Side. Describing his living quarters, they were said to be Dickensian in their meanness, filth, and insensitivity to ordinary human beings. Okay, think Charles Dickens stories. Ebenezer Scrooge and the Three Ghosts of Christmas. Is that a Dickinson story? Anyway, it's during that era. But more likely, Tale of Two Cities, which is a good story. He's got a number of others. Dickinson wrote a lot about Victorian to the Victorian Gilded Age England, where there was so many people with wealth, but you often saw homeless children living in these in squalor and doing jobs like chimney sweeps and all that. So yeah, anyway, he would leave school around 13. He had a few survival skills and realized that formal employment was out of the question. The only ability he'd acquired was as a singer, and joined several other youngsters who went to saloons in the Bowery and sang to customers. Itinerant young singers like them were common on the Lower East Side. He'd sing a lot of common ballads he would hear on the streets looking for pennies. He would become streetwise, knowing how to survive on the streets. Music was his only real source of income, though, and picked up the language and culture of the ghetto lifestyle. He learned what songs audiences liked. Let's see. He would develop a lot of his early style writing and playing music at Pelham Cafe. Um, and sometimes his songs were kind of the songs he heard from others, but if he liked the lyrics, he often thought the rhythms were kind of boggy and would change them up. Um, he delivered some hits composed by his friend George M. Cohen and another kid who was getting known on Broadway with his own songs. When Berlin ended with Cohen's Yankee Doodle Boy, everybody in the joint applauded the feisty little fellow. So he's slowly building a reputation. You know, it's slowly growing. He's getting some recognition in New York City, but it's still very localized. Any success or anything he's having. It's when he gets noticed by a staff member for Harry von Tilzer Company. That he would actually be noticed. The agent, Max Winslow, said he discovered a great kid and raved about him so much that Von Tilzer hired him. So he's gaining notice. Tin Pan Alley. You keep hearing that. Okay, leading Tin Pan Alley Publishing House. So it's a location, I guess, in New York City with a lot of the music and stuff. But Berlin would actually begin catching on, and even on Broadway, producing everything. And then in 1910, he wrote a hit that solidly established him. Alexander's Ragtime Band not only popularized the vogue for ragtime, but later inspired a major motion picture. And that really set him off to being a big songwriter. All over all over Broadway, singing a lot of huge songs. talking about Swanee River, the tune. Let's see, Alexander's Ragtime Band. It said, actually, from its first and subsequent releases, the song was near the top of the charts as others sang it. Bessie Smith in 1927, Louis Armstrong in 1937, Bing Crosby and Connie Boswell, Johnny Mercer in 1945, Al Jolson in 1947, Nellie Lutcher in 1948, and Ray Charles' big band version in 1959. So there was had a dozen hit versions in just under half a century. So just re-releasing it, many people found success with it. Although initially it was not recognized as a hit. National Dance Berlin was flabbergasted by the sudden international popularity of the song and wondered why it became a sudden hit, because it didn't initially start off that way. He decided it was partly because the lyrics, silly though it was fundamentally right, and the melody started the hills and shoulders of all America and a good section of Europe to rocking. In 1913, he was featured in the London Review Hello Ragtime, where he introduced that international rag, a song that he had written for the occasion. Simple and romantic ballads. Many of the songs were for new dances then appearing, such as the Grizzly Bear, Chicken Walk, or Foxtrot. After a Hawaiian dance craze began, he wrote that Hula Hula, and then did a string of southern songs such as When the Midnight Choo Choo Leaves for Alabama. During this period, he was creating a few new songs every week, including songs aimed at the various immigrant cultures coming in from Europe. World War I, as we said, he would serve during the end of World War I. Yeah, 1917, he was drafted into the U.S. Army. One newspaper headline read, "Army takes Berlin." As not meaning Berlin, Germany, but Irving Berlin. Yeah, there is a lot of history to Irving. Anyway, we'll go ahead and end that here. This has already been a almost 45-minute video. But with that said, As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my sources and links in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.